Hey guys, how you doing? This is JP Saricolia coming to you once again, and I want to talk about something that has been on the news for the last couple of days. On Tuesday, GameStop announced that they terminated their pursuit or the desire to being purchased, to go into a buyout. And of course, this really prompted a lot of speculation online, a lot of speculation through the news. Of course, the in this case, the stock market plummeted because GameStop is a corporation that is on a public market. It means that anyone can actually own a little piece of GameStop. And of course, everything plummeted. And of course, they, as a company, they came forward, the board of directors, the board of, in this case, investors. They gave an official announcement and the reasons why they do it. And I want to talk about it because I've been hearing a lot of speculation in regards to it. A lot of people are saying, and I've seen some videos here on YouTube where people pretty much are saying that the boat is sinking and the GameStop is pretty much going out of business soon. And I want to clarify that because that's not necessarily so. It could be a sign of bad things to come, but also could be a sign of some restructuring in the company. And some of those things I want to discuss and I want to talk about. And I want to give you a better idea for those that might feel conflicted about the situation or confused and don't know exactly what's going on. So this video is about that. I want to clarify a couple of things. First, let's go back to the beginning. GameStop, as I mentioned before, as a company has been very influential in the way the industry, the gaming as a whole has operated in pretty much the last 10 years or more. As I mentioned in a podcast, and I have the link here so you can follow it. I have a good experience with GameStop. I have nothing wrong to say about GameStop. My experience with the company has always been good. I can say that other people cannot share the same view. People that have worked for the company, and also the way, the mentality of the company, things that they have changed, the system they changed, the way they do. They actually, they hold this monopoly for so long that actually they hurt a lot of local businesses. There were a lot of practices that as a company, they pursue, of course, in order to grow that actually had been detrimental and had been the cause of the situation that GameStop is in right now. As I mentioned in that podcast, and I mentioned before, and it probably is, it's pretty much, many of you know, GameStop has been struggling financially. They lost, according to this, on the last year, over $9 billion. That was the loss they reported, which is a huge amount of money. Of course, in order to fix the problems, and they've been dealing with problems, I would say, since 2017. It's been known that they've been struggling. They're bleeding out a lot of cash money. So they find an option. They also didn't have the directors or the CEOs. They've been moving, changing CEOs like left and right. So there's no, they haven't been able to find a happy medium where actually they are able to stabilize themselves and find solutions to the problems that they're facing. Now, they were in, the options they had was to purchase. There were two investment companies that actually were famous or well known in the industry for purchasing companies that are on pretty much in dire situations. In a situation close to bankruptcy or earn bankruptcy, or they really don't have much value. So they pretty much turn the companies around, they fix them up, and they resell them for more. So, of course, this is the way they were trying to do it. Unfortunately, they couldn't come with a deal. And of course, finally, GameStop the board of directors simply decide not to go that route. And actually, this is the official, in this case, release, the news release that was done by the GameStop group. And it says, GameStop concludes process to pursue sales of company. Of course, this is in Grapevine. That's where actually the company is located. And this is in the Dallas, Texas area. Today announced that its board of directors has concluded its previously announced efforts to pursue a sale of the company in conjunction with its broader review of strategic and financial alternatives. In June 2018, GameStop's board, together with outside financial and legal advisors, commenced a review of a wide range of alternatives to enhance shareholder value. The board undertook a comprehensive review process, including discussions with third parties regarding a potential sale of the company. GameStop's board has now terminated efforts to pursue a sale of the company due to the lack of available financing on terms that would be commercially acceptable to a prospective acquirer. As part of the board's review process, as previously announced, the company sold its Spring mobile business. This transaction was completed in January 16, 2019, and generated approximately $735 million in immediate cash proceeds. The board continues to evaluate the optimal use of these proceeds, which could include reducing the company's outstanding debt, funding share repurchases, reinvesting in core video game and collectible businesses to drive growth, or a combination of these options. Furthermore, the board is continuing its search process to appoint a highly qualified permanent CEO and is working with a leading executive search firm. So this was the news release that was done pretty much on Tuesday, and of course after this it plummeted. It got to the point that the stock was like $11.19 or less. Now it has gained some value, so it's back in $11.48 as of today. But of course, a lot of people were speculating. I saw a couple of videos where people were pretty much saying that it's time to pretty much jump because of the boat is just sinking. And I want to clarify this again, like I mentioned earlier. I want to clarify so people understand what really happened. This is what happened. With a company, and I say this because I work for companies that they were pretty much belly up, or companies that were in through the process of a buyout. So I understand this firsthand. The situation of GameStop was they were losing money. They were not making enough money to really sustain themselves. As you know, many of the practice of GameStop, even though they hold the monopoly, one of the processes they have for so long was to pretty much control the market in a way that pretty much they were also harming themselves. Many towns, they have up to 4 or 5 different GameStops. As you know, there's towns here probably in my area, they're probably 10. And all of them, they're really close by. So they killed competition, but at the same time, they became competition to themselves. So yes, they kill any other company or any other one that tried to compete with them, but they themselves, they were hurting themselves. Of course, you have so much that you put into your merchandise, so much people you're paying, all this overhead, and all of this is causing damage to you. And of course, with the rise of digital media, which technically the companies like Sony or all these companies, all the developers or any of them really don't have to pay GameStop any cut of their in case of the revenue, in this case of their income. So of course it really hurts GameStop big time. So of course, this is something that self-inflicted wounds that GameStop has suffered and that has caused the problems over time. Of course, the idea of the plan was to sell the company. That we know. So they went and of course, they started the process of trying to sell it. They study the market. And normally when this happens, investors always come. There's always going to be people or other companies. You put yourself on the market. It's like selling a house. You put your house on the market and buyers, they come to see your house. So of course, it becomes a big process because you not only are dealing with them, but you also have to deal with the federal government. You have to deal with, in this case, other investors. You're dealing with a lot of people that are coming, the bank, the lenders, because when you buy a house, for example, if you purchase a house, you have ever purchased a house, I'm going to give you this simple example. You technically are not paying straight cash. You're not paying your money to buy the house. What you do is that you go through the bank, which lends you the money based, first of all, on the value of the house, and also on the value or your ability to pay back, depending on your ability to pay that money back, depending on your history. Well, what happened here is this. Even though we don't know the in and outs of this, it's very clear that GameStop, and based on what the announcement says, you can read between the lines. They were asking for X amount of money. And then the buyers, they come. Of course, they come with people that come to evaluate, that amount and the value of your property or what you're buying. Of course, they want to buy the company. Of course, GameStop is claiming, well, we own this business and it's worth this amount of money, X amount of money. We want X amount of money. Of course, the buyer comes, it comes with people, they come to evaluate that. They also bring their lawyers and all that stuff. So they evaluate that. They go make a study to realize if the price is, if this business or this thing that they're purchasing is worth that amount. Kind of like buying a house. So when they go through all of that and they evaluate and they do all of that and they come to the conclusion, actually the house is not worth that amount of money. So the business is not worth what they're saying. Yeah, they're saying it's worth that amount of money, but it's not really worth that amount of money. Now the buyer has to depend on the lender, which is the bank, will determine if they really want to pay that amount of money because it's worth that amount of money. because they're the ones putting the money out. No bank is going to give money in a business that is very close to failing or, going into bankruptcy or losing the money. No one wants to pay money on something that is not worth that much money. So ultimately, that's what happened. That's the reason why these investors or these firms that were looking for investment, it fell through the cracks because simply, GameStop is asking for too much money when the company is not worth that amount of money. And of course, this really hurts the company because, the idea for a lot of people when you sell something, technically, what's happening here is that when you buy a house, for example, in many cases when the market is really bad, and it's been the case, of course, we're coming out of that recession here in the U.S., sometimes you buy a house for this amount of money, and all of a sudden you lose all the value of your house, and then you want to sell the house, and so in order sometimes to close that house, to close to someone else, you not only have to sell the house, you also have to put money to kind of between the gap or whatever you owe to the bank, still the difference. So of course, no investor wants to do that. So they don't want to pay for what they owe because of course, in this case, the debt is really large. So they decide just to simply, for the time being, they're going to have to stay in the house. They're going to have to live in the house and try to regain some value again so they can try maybe in 5 years or 10 years or 5 years, 2 years, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years or whatever amount of time in order to sell again. That's what they're trying to do. I know it's a little hard to understand maybe for some. It's not that difficult to understand if you really kind of come to look at it. Bottom line is this. GameStop claims to have a value, claims to be worth this amount of money. Well, the bank says you're not. The investors, they cannot do anything. They want to invest, but they're not going to pay, a lot of money for something that is not worth that amount of money. So ultimately right now, what they need to do, and as they mentioned, they sold the Sprint services that we're doing with Sprint and cell phones and all that stuff. And with that cash flow that is coming now, they're going to probably pay some of the debt out, but they still have more debt. So we don't know exactly what they're trying to do. What is really clear is there's going to be restructuring for the company, which means that they're going to have to get rid of a lot of the toxic assets. And on that, in my opinion, what they need to do, they need to close the excessive amount of stores they have. They have multiple stores nationwide, worldwide, that actually are strategically are hurting other their main stores. Like, for example, here in Savannah, Georgia, where I live, there's probably like 6 or 7 GameStops. And some of them are so close together. Like sometimes you have an EV Games and you have a GameStop on the same mall, the same location. Technically, you're pretty much taking from each other. Or you also have ThinkGeek. In my opinion, what GameStop needs to do, first of all, they need to close the excessive amount of stores. They need to simplify their business approach to this. To be honest with you, even though they try to stay away from the idea of they say, well, we're not part of ThinkGeek or we own ThinkGeek, but we're not part of ThinkGeek. I think they need to get rid of that. They need to sell. Maybe they need to sell the company in chunks. It means that some of the different things that can bring some cash flow. ThinkGeek, probably get rid of Game Informer, which technically is a magazine that they're the only ones that give it away. And some other parts, other businesses they own internationally, and they need to simplify things. Maybe sell the EB Games line and then just continue with GameStop. And that way, when you restructure your expenses, you're able to concentrate and producing much better service. Now, it's difficult to understand how, or even to think how this is going to play out in the end. As the world is evolving and gaming is evolving, it's very clear that companies like GameStop are like big dinosaurs trying to survive. The same that happens with Toys R Us. There's no such a thing as too big to fail. Companies fail and they just fall through the cracks. So many companies have come and gone, and it has to do a lot with management and the way they enter into this new age of whatever industry they're in. The industry, e-commerce and all of that have taken the place of the physical retail location that, now people prefer to order online. It's easier to order online than simply going to a store and get something physical. The biggest problem with GameStop is that they have not changed some of their practices. They have continued the mindset of the physical retail, the physical location, and they have not really, in this case, revamp or pretty much kept with the online service the way other companies like Amazon are doing it. Even Walmart is doing nowadays. So, and Best Buy is trying to do. So because of this, I think they have suffered and continue to suffer. They need to move with the times. They need to get rid of everything that is unnecessary for the company. They need to probably cater to the retro community more and more ways that just simply trying to, just keeping whatever is new and not really, in this case, helping or trying to provide service for older generations. There's always going to be a market for retro gaming, and I think they can still do it if they do it right, because they have tried to do it, but they have tried to do it their way, which is always, in other words, trying to take advantage of their consumers. They have to be fair about the prices. There's a lot of things they can do in order to maintain themselves afloat. How this is going to play out, we don't know. There's a lot of speculation. I don't think the company is going to go down soon. I think it's going to be something slowly. This can be the beginning for the company for a new route in a new direction, but it depends. Right now, as it stands, whatever they have worth, all the expenses they have and all the debts they have, they're too high for the company just to reach that, so they're going to have to play it smart. It depends a lot on who they choose. So I think in the next year, in the next 2 years, we're going to see a lot of changes. Hopefully, they are for good for the company because, of course, they're the livelihood of a lot of people that work for the company. But in many ways, also, there is the risk for the company just pretty much to go upside down very soon if some of those changes are not addressed on time. They don't really attack the problems the way they should. But what is your opinion about this? I know that there is a lot in the balance, hanging in the balance for the company. But I believe that, they can do it. I believe there's still market for physical. Situation like happened right now with Nintendo with the Virtual Console really reminds us the importance of physical, that yes, virtual digital is important, but not necessarily it's what everybody wants. At the end of the day, technically you don't own anything, but the physical, people always going to love something that they can touch, they can feel, something that is actually, they can be permanent. And I think that that's where the opportunity comes for GameStop to shine if they really do this the right way. So what is your opinion? I would like to hear it. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Don't forget to hit the notification button so you're reminded of the next video. Also listen to the podcast. All the links are down below, and follow me on all the social media networks. So once again, God bless you, and I'll talk to you again. Bye-bye.